Yeah, I walk in the room, make the ceiling shake. Gold hoops, fresh fade, got that big boss cake. Never waited on a hand, I'm in my own lane. Told them put some respect when they say my name.
Thank you so much, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of They Tried It. My name is Lindawi Davis, aka The Couch Coach. And if you are unfamiliar with They Tried It, the podcast, newly launched this year, this podcast discovers and unearths the stories of people, women specifically, with a strong focus on Black and Brown women and the challenges and the struggles in which we face on a regular basis in workspaces. Ultimately, the idea here is to talk through those stories and adversity and understand how someone went step by step to get through that adversity, how they're thriving now, and what does it mean for yourself as an employee, as a professional, to work through the ways in which people really do try to play you. And with that, today, we're going to be talking to a wonderful guest. Her name is Kim Williams. Kim, introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be on your show. You have been such a delight to get to know, and I'm just thrilled for the opportunity. And my name is Kim Williams, as you said, and I'm the founder of the Fair Path Project, which is designed to help people who have been bullied at work, which has affected over 50 million individuals. And the idea is to spill all the HR secrets, to take all the backdoor conversations, say them out loud. Talk about the real things that are going, help people learn to speak code, help people learn to navigate an opaque system, and hopefully find leverage in their work to protect themselves. And if not, connect with an attorney who will help them.
I love that. The Fair Path Project right off the bat, right? The title itself already tells me that this is meant to be impactful work to ensure that people are having a different experience than what we may have been used to 20 years ago, what our parents might have been used to, where the era of silence was a thing in workspaces and still is to a certain extent. Talk to us a little bit about how you started in corporate America and how you got to the Fair Path Project.
Sure. And so actually, I've been around for like 1,000 years now. So I actually started as a history professor, which was interesting because it taught me a lot about kind of a baseline of political understanding. It kind of introduced me a little bit to the law, Civil Rights Act, and some of these things and why they came about. And then from there, I transitioned into being a diplomat with the expectation that I was going to be a public diplomacy officer. So I would give speeches and work with the press and educational institutions. And instead, they assigned me early on into HR. And at first, I was horrified. I was like, you can't do this to me. I'm a liberal arts major. This is awful. And then when I got in there, it was the most amazing work I'd ever done in my life.
Wow.
It was deeply impactful. I was there on the best day of people's lives and the worst day of people's lives. And there was nothing more meaningful. And then what I loved so much was the creativity that it demanded. You know, I was in the State Department, federal government, you have all these horrible arcane rules, and it takes a lot of creativity to navigate that space. And when someone is coming to you in crisis, to be able to figure that out and to help them was just amazing. And so I spent a lot of time learning HR in that context, which was significant because they teach you about egos. They teach you about DC egos. They teach you how to manage up in a way that the rest of HR is not really taught in the private sector. And so I left there and began working in other places where I was out of this little bubble where, I worked around really amazing people who would go yell at an ambassador. They didn't care what rank they were. If they were doing something wrong and they were bullying somebody, they were going to let them know, let them have it. And all of a sudden I found myself in this space where nobody was saying anything. It was that exact culture of silence you were talking about. Very good old boy. This is how things were. And so I show up from DC as an outsider. I'm like, no, you can't do that. And immediately it was, your head's on a chopping block. We're going to fire this person. How do we get rid of them? And I learned so many hard, interesting lessons about navigating that space and surviving that space. And I came out with some repeatable processes. And so through that journey is what led me to create the Fair Path Project, which is only 3 months old, but it's many years of lived experience in working with folks to hopefully help others not have to go through as many hurdles.
Yeah, I think a lot of the gems that you have just stated for us, one, lived experience. Lived experience will show you exactly what's true and what's not in a world where a lot of times, especially as women, right? We're told, oh no, that couldn't possibly be happening.
Yes.
That person couldn't be doing that to you.
Yeah. You're imagining things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, they were just having a bad day, but always an excuse. Yeah.
It's always some excuse instead of just landing on the fact that this person is having a hard time because this bad actor, AKA also maybe known as an asshole, right?
Yeah.
In certain circumstances, is behaving and has a little bit of quote unquote what they perceive as power.
Mm-hmm.
And is making the life of the employee much more difficult than it needs to be.
100%.
What are you seeing coming from corporate America, still working in corporate America to a certain extent because you still have your daytime job, or are you still just all the way focused in on this right here?
I have left my daytime job and I'm doing this full time. It's the love of my life. And
It's the love of your life.
Yeah.
I love that. How hard was that jump, considering the context of what we already have to go through in corporate America to begin with?
Yeah. So for me, in some ways, because several years ago, I became a spokesperson for in-workplace abuse. And so I was doing a lot of, interviews and podcasts and writing, and it just kind of mushroomed and grew to the point where it was almost becoming 2 full-time jobs. So I took kind of a long, slow path. So it made it a little bit easier to seep into it.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped. And, I'd already met so many incredible people along the way. And so it just kind of made it easy to get started from there.
Absolutely. And when you think about an organization like in workplace abuse, talk to us a little bit about that. How did that come to your radar to start to kind of bridge this pathway to the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. So I first heard about in workplace abuse a couple of years ago. They were looking for folks to testify before the Massachusetts Joint Labor Committee in support of the Workplace Psychological Safety Act.
Yeah.
And immediately I was drawn to this because we have so many problems with civil rights law. It's not that it hasn't done wonderful things. It's helped millions of people, but there's a huge hole in it in the sense that if you look at the EEOC website, it'll tell you exactly what harassment is. If somebody's screaming at you, humiliating you, undermining your ability to do your work, you have met that legal threshold for harassment.
Yeah.
But in order for it to become actionable, in order for you to sue someone, you have to tie in protected characteristics.
Yeah.
And in 2025, that's really hard. The courts basically make you a mind reader, because most people aren't stupid enough to say, oh, I'm doing this to you because you're a Black woman.
Right.
Even though it may be obvious that you may be singled out, you may be this, but the burden of proof is just too hard.
Yeah.
And then worse is that you have folks that are just mean to everyone.
Right.
So now
they wake up as if it's their mission to just be.
Exactly. And that was actually what happened to me. I filed a complaint against the chief executive. I said all the targets were women. And then they did an investigation, came forward. I didn't get the investigation. I'm pretty sure a man came forward. And so therefore, they even said, yeah, you were abused. Have a nice day. Nothing unlawful happened. Right. So when I saw this bill and I saw that you could now sue your employer if they know about this and they don't do anything, I'm like, this is gold. This is so needed for millions of people. And so I really wanted to testify on behalf of HR because HR has so much secret information. And I knew that all the rules were written by employment attorneys that were protecting companies. And that's what trained HR. And a lot of times they're dealing with, the fact that they're not respected in their jobs, or CEOs are yanking things away from them, not giving them information. And so there's this kind of quiet, invisible machinery that does so much harm that I wanted to get out there and I wanted to testify and I wanted to talk about it. Yeah. And so that's how I first became involved and fell even more in love with it and got my daughter involved. When she was 15, she testified before the Rhode Island Senate Labor Committee to talk about how when I was going through my own workplace abuse, I just wasn't there. I wasn't there the way she needed me to be there. Because your cortisol is pumping, you're afraid for your job. And so it affects your kids, it affects your community, it affects so much more than just the employee. And so we're still in this and, we're going to keep fighting until a law is passed.
Yeah, you've said so many things that are very key to understanding what a person goes through when they're in the middle of a challenge or something adverse, or something that someone else may just brush off as, oh, this person is, they just have a bad attitude. Mm-hmm. It's fine. Cortisol levels. Absolutely. One of the killers of women in general, particularly also Black women. And I think about these things that you listed off, the cortisol levels, how it impacts your family, how it is that you're showing up. The thing I want to add into that is how people feel like they're very much on an island when they're in the middle of an adverse or challenging space at work. What did you find was useful when that challenge or adversity first came to you? And let's focus on one of the challenges, right? When you were in corporate America, you had this executive who was whatever they called themselves to be. Okay. We'll just call him Jim. Okay. Jim decided that he was just going to be awful for whatever reason he was being awful. What did you discover about Jim? And what was the first step that you took in order to file that complaint? Did it require you to pull your receipts? Did it require you to pull meeting notes? Did it require you to take a look at those guidelines of the company and say, okay, here's everything listed here? Like, what were some of the things and steps that you took to really take on this individual and the company at that?
One of the most critical things to do when you're in that situation and your job's in danger, and for me as a single mom, that I was definitely in fight or flight in that moment. And when you strip everything else away, because you already hit on a lot of good advice right there, documenting, keeping the receipts, all that stuff is so important. Right. But how you show up is so critical. And a lot of times you are alone on an island. And so nobody's coming in for your rescue. And so it's just you. And the hardest lesson for me, but the greatest gift, I think, in all of this is you have to treat it like the life-threatening emergency that it is.
Yes.
And we don't always do that.
Yes. Oh, say that again, Kim. You have to treat it like a what?
A life-threatening emergency.
Right there.
Yeah. And it is, because now we have the science to back it up. Brain scans of people who go through workplace abuse will mirror combat veterans. Yeah. And so, there's direct ties to cancer. The financial ruin is real. The divorces are real. So everyone thinks this is invisible stuff. It's not. It manifests in very physical, awful ways, down to homelessness, down to suicide, down to all the worst things in life. There's a direct line to this. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes our instinct is to toughen it up, try and brush it off, get a hobby, meditate, all that horrible advice. Yeah. But the number one thing that you can do is look at that cortisol, feel it in your system, acknowledge it, don't expect it to just go away, and then do whatever it is that you have the resources to do. For me, restorative yoga, which you can get, actually saved my life, without question. It kept me calm enough so I could think and I could speak and I could show up in a way that made me safer. Yeah. I've heard people talk about knitting. I've never done it, but there's a lot of science behind it that it reduces cortisol. Some people need to get on a treadmill. Some people massages. Even if you don't have money for a massage, you'll be surprised how many massage therapy schools are out there. For $25, you can have a student do it and get that cortisol out of your system. That's whatever it takes. Laughing with girlfriends, anything, get that out of there. Then you are now ready to engage and give yourself that space. You don't have to respond in the moment. Sometimes you can just be quiet, let it happen, but make sure you've got your head on straight to do that. And then just like you said, you want all that documentation to be really clear. And so one of the first things we wanted to do with the Fair Path Project is, and we have this on our website, where there's a documentation tool. It's AI based. So you can go in there and you could basically say, there's a whole bunch of horrible stuff happening to me. And it will work with you to come up with a timeline. Yeah. And you want to be thinking about a timeline, and you want to be thoughtful about your communication, because your communication, and this is so important, is never about the person you're talking to. Ever. Ever. Good. You know this. And so you are writing for a member of a jury trial. And if you keep that person in your line of sight the whole time, everything you write will be perfect. Yeah. And so you're writing for that independent outside observer with no context under the end of the road. And so anything you position yourself with is really, really critical for that. And so you can go through this tool on our website and it'll help strip out all the feelings. So, oh, this person's an asshole. This person is, we don't want that in official documentation, no matter how true it is. That's right. Because what it looks like, it starts to look like the person
the person that's being oppressed and mistreated, oh, they're just having a tantrum.
Exactly.
Oh, they're just having some sort of feelings. And who wants feeling? Like it's all of
They're
these shenanigans.
sensitive. Yeah.
Exactly.
So strip all that stuff out, get into just the facts. And then you can do things that you also point on, which is really smart. Upload that handbook, upload company policies, because it could be unlawful where you are. But also too, it can be against company policies, and that can be really significant. And so work through that. And then the system will also even spit out a likelihood score. It's not 100% perfect, but it compares you with, like, say, EEO data. And it's like there's a 40% chance this was a race or gender discrimination claim. And so that can be really helpful for you understanding where you are. In addition to that, one of the most important things you can do, get into your doctor. Go see your doctor and file a workers' comp claim. Now, not everywhere, there's only a certain number of places where what they call a site claim is compensable. But even if it's not compensable, what you're doing is you're building a record outside the company walls. So your doctor is saying, I'm treating this person, they're complaining about workplace abuse. They're on, I'm having to put them on anti-anxiety medication. I can confirm as a medical expert that this person is under stress because of this situation, and start creating all that. And then keep that timeline, keep it going. Make sure every incident is being documented, which is the facts, who, what, when, where, what your witnesses were, any evidence, making sure that, if somebody's sending you Teams messages, you're snapping pictures with your phone, you're getting whatever you can out of the hands of the company, because if something happens in an instant, you will lose it. And it can be a nightmare from there. And then with that, you start positioning yourself to communicate. And so what I always recommend for folks is get a timeline in place, understand your policies, understand the law, and put together a letter to HR that says, these things happen, in a very neutral tone. And I believe it's in violation of policy X, law Y. You don't have to be a legal expert here. That's what I say. I believe. They can't argue with what you believe. Say at the very end, and it's affecting my ability to do my job. And then send it off. And make sure you have a copy, because at that moment, you have officially informed the company that you are being harmed. And it's a liability now for them if they don't do anything, or if they fire you, if they take some kind of adverse employment action. You've struck first, and you now have a record that has this, so that it makes it a little bit easier to protect yourself.
Absolutely. I think you've given so many wonderful pieces of insight, and it's only after you have that first run-in, which my hope is that people don't have run-ins at their jobs, because the whole thing of having a job is to do work and to partner with people and build community. And you never know, you might end up with some great friends from that environment, but that is not always the case, right? That a lot of times, you're thinking to yourself, I'm just trying to do what I need to do. And I'm constantly being interrupted. And I think for myself, there have been many times across my career where I've had to speak up for myself, or I had to file a complaint, or I had to file an inquiry, or I had to do something anonymously. And each of those times, I can't recall a time where there was a true resolve to those situations. And one of the most recent times in my career, still trying to figure out when that resolve is going to happen. Right. And so I think with the insight that you listed out, making sure that you, keep those emotions out of those statements, state the facts very clearly, and snapshotting every bit of information, because in the climate that we're in right now, you could be laid off very easily. Anybody could be grouped into a group of people saying, oh, yes, the job and the job function have been eliminated. But what they've effectively have done is not only eliminated the job function that you and others have created, they've made it seem like you were a part of this group of elimination. And now it's very much swept away into the wind until you decide to take whatever steps you decide to take. So what I'm hearing is you should always be prepared with your packet of information so that it can travel with you in case something happens. What have you seen as of recent, just from your own reading, just from your own research? Do you think that more men, for example, are starting to catch on to what's happening in the workplaces because statistically speaking, they don't typically file complaints in the same way or same rate as women. Do you see that changing? Do you see that people are starting to have a bit more insight? And not to say that men don't have to face problematic behaviors, they do. But I think I'm trying to ground this question in understanding how are things changing now?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two thoughts there. I mean, one, if you look at male dominated fields, the suicide rates are horrifying. And so I am part of this workplace suicide prevention committee. They get together monthly. And a lot of times it's like industry leaders in the construction and mining industry working with PhD researchers on trying to come up with common language to help men feel safer to say, hey, that hurt my feelings, or some of these things, because it tends to attract a certain type of individual into that field. But then on top of it, things get so rough. And then a lot of folks don't feel safe enough to say, this is really hurting me. And so then they're more likely to self-medicate or take their own life to such a degree that like OSHA actually has a lot of information they posted out there on suicide awareness and trying to promote that. So I think that, in the most extreme forms, there's a lot more direct conversation and focus, which is good. And then I think when you get into environments like we've seen, where our president is constantly, saying quiet piggy, he's targeting, female reporters and everyone around them is just quiet,
Right.
Really horrific to watch and see, but it's also reminiscent of a lot of other workplaces where people are like, oh, I don't want to be a target, so I'm not going to say anything, even when it's safer for them to say something. And so I think if you look at like the LinkedIn conversations, those are also beginning to shift in recognition. So there's like more direct public call outs of that, more direct public call outs of men not intervening on this, more men online saying, yeah, this really isn't okay. And so I know when I first started talking about workplace abuse, 5 years ago, like nobody was talking about it. It was considered like crazy to throw that stuff out there. Now my entire feed is full of it. So I do think there's some progress there. I think we're at a stage now where like, how do we get all this talk and really translate it into action? But we have taken that step forward.
Trying to get the talk into activation mode is always very difficult, and taking it back to the individual, right? Them not feeling like they're on an island. What did you do to say, you know what, I feel very much alone, right? Because a lot of times when you're filing a complaint, you've got all your information together, you've got your packet together, you think, very key, the pathway forward to try to get through this. But how important is it to have community, or even just that one person, even at the job, and of course outside of the job, to kind of assist you while you're walking through, because there's going to be a lot of naysayers along the way.
For me, I really struggled to find community at all. In fact, I remember one point where I was coming home and, just sick to my stomach, usual, just completely miserable, another day of being kind of chewed out. And I called someone very close to me and I'm like, I just can't take this anymore. I've got to file a complaint. I've got to do something. And to my surprise, this person yelled at me, said I was being selfish, said, you should just take it. Think about your daughter. You're a bad mom is what, the message I was taking away. Like, you should just sacrifice like everyone else. And it's kind of a generational thing. But what was interesting is it ended up having the opposite effect. In fact, the moment she mentioned my daughter and I was thinking about all the pain I was in, how lonely I felt. And I was like, if this ever happened to her, I would want her to think that the Calvary had arrived behind her, because mom would walk into her office, and mom would be like the exact opposite. I would have her back. If her career was ruined, I would be there in every shape or form. And so for me, it became like a different motivation, where unfortunately I didn't feel like I had that community. And I say that because in our dream state we do. And if you have it, my God, lean on it, cherish it, hold on to it. Believe it or not, it is inside of you, and you will come out of this so changed and so much more powerful that I don't want people to kind of give up or land in despair if everyone around you is saying, tough it up. Because what's interesting is once you pull that trigger and once you file that complaint, everyone knows it's you. 9 times out of 10, I've seen it for years. Other people will step forward because now you made it safe for them. That's right. Even if they won't publicly have your back.
That's a great call out.
Yeah.
That's a great call out. I think for the times that I have spoken up or I filed a complaint or what have you, a lot of that discussion went on behind closed doors, meaning for some people it was, oh, you're absolutely right. This thing that you're going through with said individual or these people is actually true, but they're telling that to me. They're not saying it out loud. And I always find I have a smidge of an issue with that only because you are a voice that could be helpful to me, right? Which means that if you're helpful to me, that means you're being able to help other people who haven't and are very scared to speak up, right? Yeah. And so I feel like even in those situations, I've been also, while I was going through the hard time, was also coaching other people to say, listen, I am not a person that says a thing and doesn't do said thing. If I said I'm going to file a complaint and I'm telling you to do the same, that means I've either already done it or I'm ready to do and go as far as I need to go, right? Yeah. With said complaint. And so having that belief in self, I think is super, super important, but also just the belief in the truth of the situation. Was that something that helped you through any of the adversity or challenges that you faced, that knowing that the truth of the situation was so much more important than what someone else was saying or what the company might do or any power that they looked like they had?
Oh my God, that was so beautiful what you just said. And I didn't know it at the time, but I learned it later from working with whistleblowers. So whistleblowers have it the absolute worst. So these are people who are calling out big banks, calling out the federal government. And a lot of times they will have the whole of the federal government come down and crush them. They will end up in jail. They will end up killing themselves. They will end up in these horrible, horrible places. Yeah. And I remember at one recent talk, they mentioned that because of the way the human brain is wired.
Yeah.
Thousands of years of scanning the horizon, for things that could hurt you. We live in so much fear. Less than 5% of human beings will speak up and do what you just said. And so it's an absolute rarity. And, some folks take the position of you just have to love others where they are. If they're too afraid, then they're too afraid.
Absolutely.
But I also just think, too, that courage is contagious. And
it is.
Like, when you see that person get rained out and melt into a puddle and everybody's like, ow, I don't want that to happen to me. Same thing happens when somebody pushes back against their boss and is not afraid. Then people are like, yeah, that is wrong, And then
that's right.
The opposite effect from that. But part of the reason I built up the processes that I built up too is it's not just you that's afraid. Your boss is afraid. The bully's afraid. HR is afraid. Everyone's afraid except for the lawyers who are getting paid. And so never discount that. No matter what you're looking at, they're absolutely terrified of being called to the carpet. They're terrified of you leaving them. They're terrified of all this stuff. And everyone knows it.
Yeah.
So, even if you're not feeling it on the inside, just project that. And
absolutely.
Feel that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Being out here as your own superhero is not easy.
No.
Being your own superhero is not easy at all. But that's a great call out to remember that just because someone looks like they have your livelihood in question, no one can take from you what is meant. And I know that's more on the spiritual side, but if you really internalize that, you can't stop me.
Yeah.
The plans for my life are much bigger than what you think you can do to me.
Yeah. And there's a lot of power in that. There's so much power in how you show up and how much calm you present. And it scares the hell out of them. It really does. Cause I'm on the HR side where you're hearing the conversations from all sides. And so that's one of the things I want folks to know, your bully's afraid and they're going to somebody saying, how can they do this? And, what if I get in trouble? And, and you won't see it, but it's happening more often than people realize.
Absolutely. And the connection point there with the company is the company has a certain branding. Heavens forbid that branding be questioned in the public, right? Which is why we see a lot of those cases not make it to court and they're settled.
Yep.
With the NDAs.
Majority.
And the payouts.
97% of cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh no, we know we did wrong. We're never going to admit it. So we're just going to pay you out this check to keep it.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about one or two things that you think HR should be doing now, because I remember you and I were talking, and I've spoken with a lot of different people who have had adverse situations, and it's all the same, just in a different iteration. But the statement goes, HR, people in HR, I won't say all of them, but for the most part, many of them absolutely need to be trained in these spaces when it comes to how to handle people, number one. Number two, understanding how to research allegations, accusations, and then combating that, or I should say contextualizing that when it comes to policies. Because a lot of times you'll file a complaint, it'll be assigned to a person in something called employee relations or people engagement or what have you. And the person that you end up with is not someone who's actually going to look at it. In fact, they're probably going to run through some templatized format that they're used to seeing. And then they're going to spit that case back out and say, oh, no policy has been broken, or there's no red flags here. So what are some of the things that you think that HR could be doing now to better assist people instead of being more focused on the company? Because old school rules still apply. HR is for the company and benefits that are assigned to employees. Whereas you have people like myself, you, and others who are oftentimes in companies that are the direct opposite of that. I'm not trying to uplift per se the brand of the company. That's someone else's job. My job is to figure out how to help people. Yep. So what are one or two things that you think that HR could be doing across the board, across industries?
Just one or two things. I have like a 12-hour answer to this question.
Oh, I'm pretty sure we could turn it into a 72-hour thing, but
no, you hit on such a good point. And HR has a terrible reputation, and it's earned, and like I say that as someone who comes from this profession. I mean, even just recently we saw where SHRM, the so-called master and major trainer of HR was just sued for $11.5 million for a race discrimination claim. So not only the fact that happened inside that organization, but then even what came out through the process, that the person who investigated took like a short course, had no idea what they were doing. I mean, it was so embarrassing on so many levels.
Absolutely.
I've actually always been a huge critic of SHRM, and part of it kind of goes back to they never teach how to manage up. And they're outdated. I'm actually glad this happened. I think they need a moment of reckoning. I think HR needs to be completely rebuilt because they're teaching people how to throw birthday parties, how to do rank and file trainings. But what do you do when the CEO says no and the CEO is the problem? Right. And because, if you have a bad HR shop, you typically have a bad CEO. They want it that way. And that's why, you hear that expression all the time that, the fish always rots at the head. Right. And so if you have an empowered HR, it means you have a CEO that gets it and cares and actually wants honest feedback, wants to deal with the hard stuff, doesn't run from difficult conversations. But so much of HR is built around one thing and one thing only, and that's reducing liability. Yeah. So if you're in HR right now, and there are a lot of really good eggs in HR that are in pain, and I see it on the private chats, they're being bullied. A lot of times worse than anybody else because they're coming in saying, hey boss, so many people are complaining about X, Y, and Z, and it's scaring the boss. Now the boss is screaming at them, wanting them to make it go away. And so when you're dealing in that space where everything is about reducing liability, lean into that part. Because for me, I've made a case over the years that protecting the employee is protecting the company.
That's right.
And build out that leverage. You can go to websites like Violation Tracker. You can go on Google News and just do searches for small papers on industries like yours. Bring it to them. Say, here's all the lawsuits in the past year, because those are the two places where I find the best information, and say, they did just like what we're doing and they were sued for $20 million. Like, I'm here to help you. I need you to trust me. Let me have the conversation. I will do all the hard, ugly parts. I need you just to not back away from it once I'm done, and to lean into that. And then to make sure that you've trained your people correctly. I mean, so when I'm interviewing for folks on my HR teams, one of the first things I do in an interview is I throw out situational questions. And I'll ask them and I'll say, hey, this may be an entry-level job, but say I can't make a meeting, and for whatever reason, you're in a meeting with a top executive and then make a racist comment or a sexist comment. What do you do? And I want to see them say, well, I may be terrified, but I think it's really important to address it in that moment. Or I think it's important to document that. That's all I care about. I can train anyone else, but like, if you have enough spine to take that risk in an interview where you don't know what I'm going to say, show me that you have spine, you're my person, and I'm going to take care of you.
That is delicious. The spine part, having a little bit of spine can be the biggest difference in a situation for an employee.
100%. And reminding them day in and day out that you have their back. I mean, because if you're top of that HR shop, then that's your job. Your job is to deal with all that ugly political feelings and to protect your people. And if they make a decision and it's the right decision, then it owns with you. You don't throw them under the bus. You don't let them, deliver that message 5 levels up. It's on you. And then it's also so important to build that trust with people, throughout your organization, the top of the organization, where you're like, hey, I'm a nice person. I'm always going to be a nice person. I'm going to be the nicest bad cop you ever met. But if you hurt somebody, I'm going to call you and we're going to have a conversation, and I'll keep a very warm, friendly tone. But if we need to fire you, that's going to happen. And I also did that in my organization, where if there was an accusation of bullying, I picked up the phone as the VP. You got to call straight for me. Like, I want everyone to know how serious this is. And I won't break confidences, but people know if they bring a complaint to me and then that person's not there a week later, I addressed it. And, or, there will be a change in behavior. There will be something at any level of an organization. And so HR has got to be equipped and trained to do that. Right now, they're not. And I've actually just created an e-course where we do like a 3-hour live webinar where we do real role playing with real nasty stuff. And then there's even like a 30-minute consult privately after that to try and finally give people the tools that they need. And it's also valuable for other folks, because if you've got a weak HR shop, you have to figure out now how to communicate through them in a way that that message will be carried forward. And there's a way to do that too. But that's essentially what the Fair Path is made to do. It's just to give people that real path to accountability, because without accountability, you have abuse. There's no more nicely.
That right there is the delicious gem of the day. Without accountability, it is simply abuse, darling. And we can't call it anything else. We also can't just pretend like it's not there. I really love this thought process around giving people situational circumstances to work through, and not the situational circumstances of the past when it comes to interviewing. No. Why not pull from what you see in the news, from an accredited story that has come out about said company? How would you have handled this problem? How would you have handled this particular allegation? I think that is a great exercise to perform with folks when interviews are happening. And more specifically, I also think it's a great way to get executives in the room and get them talking through how it is or where it is that they may have failed, right? And allowing that conversation to really permeate, to ensure that when you are dealing with people and you have a team and you have an organization, that your main concern isn't just about the money. Because companies are hitting billion-dollar, trillion-dollar company status, but all of the people that are working for the company have allowed the company to get there, have allowed all of those board members to become richer, have allowed all of those executives to become richer. You should be feeding the souls and the behaviors and the needs of the people that are allowing you to get there. One mantra that you live by.
It's only scary the first time.
You better say that. Say it again, Kim. Say it.
It's only scary the first time. When you're really terrified to do something new outside your comfort zone, to hit send on that email, to confront someone who's a nightmare, it's only scary the first time. And it's such a gift, because to never be afraid again is the most wonderful, freeing thing in the world. So give that to yourself. Just take even a baby step in that direction, and you're doing it's a wonderful act of self-love.
I love it. The wonderful act of self-love. I want to add to that because it's absolutely true so many times in life where I was the one standing there by myself and did the thing that needed to be done. I want to call out to folks, and I've said this many times across different episodes or just in conferences and summits, but your level of courage, no matter where you stand, whether you are at the beginning space of how you were developing your courage or you're someone who is a veteran of utilizing your courage for activation, you still have it. You still have it. And whatever your level of courage is, use that to move you forward in whatever the situation that may be occurring to you, whether that's in the workplace or whether that's in your personal life. Kim, tell everyone how to find you.
Fairpathproject.com has everything you need to know. I'm also really active on LinkedIn, starting to do YouTube. Everything you need to know about me, you can find at www.fairpathproject.com.
Love that. And should people also, actually, I already know the answer to this, but for everyone that's watching, check out workplace abuse.
In workplace abuse, yes.com. Tons of great resources there for anyone that's going through things. And please consider supporting the Workplace Psychological Safety Act. Even taking 2 seconds to send an automated note that goes to your local lawmakers can make such a huge difference. But this law, we've been working for years on it, and we're getting close in several states. It could really change millions of lives and really protect a lot of people.
Kim, thank you so much. I will more than likely be inviting you back for a part 2 because I feel like we have tons and tons of things to talk about and want to make sure people gain as much insight and gems as possible. But I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being so candid. To everyone watching, you deserve to have a good life. You deserve to do good work and to walk into work with your own acknowledgement of self, feeling accepted, and walking right back out into your day without all of the stresses that were unnecessary. I applaud you for standing up for yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode. Check me out on LinkedIn and also through IG as well. And They Tried It will continue to live on YouTube and across all podcasting platforms as well. Feel free to subscribe. I'm looking for all of you and want to make sure that we are building this community together. Cheers to all of you and have a great day. Bye.
I ain't never gonna stop. No cosign needed, I've been self-made. If you cut from my cloth, that's designer grade. Level